Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. The hype is building and building and building for JJ McCarthy, so we're going to talk about if that hype is even warranted. There's some new information about Odunze from our friend Matt Harmon, and there's a bunch of other news from around the league, including some rule changes and some other coach interviews and fun stuff like we talked about yesterday. So plenty to talk about today. We've got a good episode lined up. So go ahead, pull out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you for tuning in on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, and of course, thank you to everyone listening on the podcast network as well. Thank you for tuning in everywhere that you like to listen to Wake a Take. Let's go ahead and talk about some fun stuff. Before we get into the JJ McCarthy, the Odunze stuff, we'll just start with some Damien Harris news. He has officially retired from the NFL. He's had a solid career, had a couple good fantasy football seasons, but ultimately health is what's going to lead to this retirement. He's not super old. I want to say he was only 27 years old. Probably should have checked the age. But either way, he's out of the league now. Unfortunate for him. Like I said, he's a little bit younger to retire, but he kind of been bouncing around, getting hurt, never getting a true opportunity. So you might as well retire at that point. Wish him the best in his next step outside of the league. There's Damien Harris retiring. So long. Goodbye. Thank you for your career. Thank you for your couple seasons. You were a cheap fantasy football asset for a minute there. Got us some nice points. So thank you very much, Damien, and best of luck to your next step. And then we'll move into some, let's do the Broncos. Let's talk about the Broncos, because yesterday we did a mock draft thing, and I said that I actually think that it'll be the Broncos that end up trading up for a QB, not the Vikings. I know a lot of the hype out there is that the Vikings will do it, but I'm not quite sold on that. I think that it's going to be the Broncos. And then yesterday, Sean Payton came out and said it's realistic for the Broncos to trade up for from pick number 12. And I really just think that makes a ton of sense for the Broncos. There is not a player there at 12 that would make a world of a difference for the Broncos. And with them just having the worst situation possible with Russell Wilson and losing all that money and him not working out, they are desperate to get a young quarterback in to try to build around going forward. And the way to do that is the draft. There's not a more desperate team in the league right now for quarterback than the Broncos. That's exactly where it's at. I know the Vikings, a lot of people say it's them. It's the Broncos. They've got nothing going for them. You do not want to roll out Jarrett Stidham. They're going to get a quarterback, and I think they're going to trade up for one. And it's cool to see that Sean Payton says that it's realistic for them to do it. They'll figure it out, whether it's a pick next year, a first and third this year, because I don't think they have their second round pick anymore. But they'll figure it out, and I think they're going to do it, and I think they're going to get Drake May. Or, as a lot of people are suggesting now, well, because, JJ McCarthy might not be available. And that's because a lot of the hype has started to form around JJ McCarthy. Yesterday, he went from plus 1,500 to plus 500 to be the number 2 overall pick, landing with the Commanders. There were also lots of reports that came out yesterday that from the Commanders front office that the feeling around the building is that they'll go JJ McCarthy at pick number 2. And it's kind of come out of nowhere, to be completely honest with you guys. I know we've been hearing the hype build for JJ McCarthy, that he's a top 10 pick. The outside of the top 3, he's becoming number 4. Nowhere did we expect him to become the quarterback 2 in this draft class. And maybe that's because, we didn't expect JJ McCarthy to even enter the NFL this year. Like, we thought that he would probably give it one more year. He was only a junior. But, of course, you go undefeated. You win the national championship. Your coach is leaving. What else is there to do? And that's kind of shaken up the QB prospects in this draft class. Of course, we've got Heisman winner Jaden Daniels, so you'd think he would be the second quarterback taken. But also Drake May. He's someone that's been hyped for over a year now as the quarterback 2 behind Caleb Williams for fantasy football. And you haven't even heard anything. I have not heard shit about Drake May this entire process. Really, the only thing I've heard about Drake May is that teams aren't interested in Drake May, which is definitely, kind of shades of CJ Stroud, and JJ McCarthy is shades of Will Levis. So I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. But I just want to talk about if the hype is even warranted. Like, what are NFL teams finding in JJ McCarthy that is so exciting and tantalizing to them? And well, it's because he's a really, really good game manager. I know when all of this hype has started, tons of people coming out from the woodwork saying that JJ McCarthy is not an NFL quarterback. He doesn't have the stats to back it up. He will fail at the NFL level. I don't know why NFL teams like him. And I've kind of been pretty steady with JJ McCarthy the whole time. You guys know I'm a Michigan fan, and I don't have the highest expectations for JJ McCarthy, but I still do firmly believe he's a good quarterback. Michigan has been going through hell at the quarterback position really my entire life. The only quarterback that I was super excited about with Michigan was Denard Robinson. And when he went to the NFL, he just became a running back and a kick returner. So to see JJ McCarthy, and I guess Chad Henne was a good one too, but he transferred away. And that was the same era. That's how long it's been since we've been excited about a Michigan quarterback. And JJ McCarthy has just done so much for not only the program, but himself. I mean, I know we talk about his stats not being great, but when you kind of take in the full picture, it's not that big of a deal. Let's just talk about it. Let's talk about it. Because he's gone from, a fringe second rounder, maybe third rounder, to now potential top 5 pick, second quarterback taken off the board. So what has caused JJ McCarthy's stock to go so high? I mentioned what he's done for Michigan. He got the Ohio State monkey off their back. He's beaten Ohio State now 3 straight years and has only lost 1 game his entire tenure as a Michigan Wolverine with a 27-1 record. Of course, we talk about he's gone on to win the national championship. He's won 3 Big Ten championships. He has just been a winner at the college level. And then his profile is really, really good as well. He's 6'3", he's 221 pounds, and he's incredibly, incredibly agile. He had the 6th fastest 3-cone drill among all positions at the NFL Combine this year, showcasing his elite footwork. And we saw that, like, if you look at his film, how good of a runner he is, how good he is outside of the pocket, how good he is throwing on the run, how good he is escaping and then just running for a few yards. I mean, he's a really, really tantalizing prospect at the quarterback position. Because he can throw the ball, because he can manage games, because he can run the ball, because he can break sacks, because he's elusive in the pocket. And you look at his stats, and all of this just makes a ton of sense. Because Michigan was one of the worst teams for a quarterback in college football. They were 117th among all college teams in pass play percentage per game, and 76th in pass plays per game overall. So an abysmally low passing percentage for the Michigan Wolverines last season. And yet, JJ McCarthy still finished top 35 in pass yards and passing touchdowns with 3,000 pass yards and 22 passing touchdowns last year. And on top of that, added 8 rushing touchdowns on the ground and 508 rushing yards over the last 2 seasons combined. And he had the 6th best completion percentage last season among all quarterbacks in college football, completing 72.3% of his passes. So now we're talking about a guy who's only lost once in 3 years, a guy who has beaten Ohio State and won the Big Ten championship 3 years in a row, who's won a national championship, who has prototypical size and speed for a quarterback, and has been incredibly effective as a passer at the college level, even if it isn't world-beating stats. And that's what a lot of NFL teams are looking for these days. I mean, you could even look at Patrick Mahomes last year and see he was just kind of a game manager, and then they go on to win the Super Bowl. And Patrick Mahomes is a much better prospect than JJ McCarthy. And so I think that JJ McCarthy is going to be fine at the NFL level, and I think his high floor is what is attracting all these NFL teams, because what Jaden Daniels and Drake May have in their ceiling is nowhere near the floor that JJ McCarthy presents. And of course, on the flip side, JJ McCarthy's ceiling is nowhere near Jaden Daniels or Drake May's ceiling. JJ McCarthy is plain and simple a really good processor, a really good game managing quarterback who could do everything you need from a quarterback, but not much more. But that's fine, because he's going to be winning you the games, and he's going to not be turning the ball over a ton. So JJ McCarthy, I'm getting more and more excited about. I think this is going to be a guy that you're going to be able to get in your super flex drafts after the other two. Even with the high draft capital, I still think that so many people in this space view Drake May and Jaden Daniels as the better fantasy football prospects for our teams in super flex. But I think something that gets understated a ton in fantasy football is how good of a football player they are and how long they can have a career. And JJ McCarthy may never be a top 10 quarterback on a season-to-season basis, but I would be shocked if he ever falls outside the top 20. And I would be shocked if he doesn't have a long career. He's only 21 years old right now, which is really, really young for a quarterback prospect. Again, only 3 years. And yet, he's done so much in his limited time at Michigan. And I just think that I wouldn't say the sky is the limit, but the sky is the floor with this guy. I mean, I think that he is going to be really, really good for a long time, but maybe not great. But do we need a player to be great? No, we really don't. If we could get, I mean, let's just say I want to say Josh Allen light. I don't really, a Ryan Tannehill's best season in Tennessee, right? Where he was a top 15 quarterback. That's fine. He's exactly like Ryan Tannehill in a way, in that he has some elusiveness. He has a good enough arm, and he's a good game manager and would do really, really well in the right system. But I think he's better than Ryan Tannehill even. So gee, I'm so sorry, JJ. I'm really sorry, JJ, that I gave you a Ryan Tannehill comp, but that's where my head went. Just a slightly elusive quarterback with a decent arm that will do well in the right system. But if you're telling me that you could get a guaranteed good Ryan Tannehill season out of a quarterback, that's really not a bad thing. That's really, really not a bad thing. We've seen lots of success from Ryan Tannehill. And I'm just going to keep, top 6 season. There we go. QB7 in back-to-back seasons. So, okay, here we go. So there we go. It's really not that big of a deal for that. So that's my comp. I'm just going to lock it in. Good Ryan Tannehill is my JJ McCarthy comp. And I don't think that is that bad. Brian says trade frauds in the house. Keep telling me what to avoid. Knowing what not to do is just as important, Birdman. This is true. If you know, actually, I would argue that knowing what not to do is probably the best thing in fantasy football, because we make a ton of mistakes. And if you know what mistakes not to make, then you're kind of ahead of everyone else. And so I do like that point there, Brian, although we're trade gods, not trade frauds. And you know it. You've got some great advice from me and Maddie Kiwoom on the Trade God Show. You know you have. But that's my JJ McCarthy spiel. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, and I do think the hype is deserving. Do I think he'll be drafted number 2 to the Commanders? That I'm still unsure of. That I'm still not quite wrapping my head around. Again, I still feel that this is very, very Will Levis-esque in that last year, all this hype build for nothing. For really nothing. Still got really high draft capital, but wasn't, of course, a top 5 pick. I think that that's similar to what we'll see from JJ McCarthy. I wouldn't be surprised if it still just ends up being Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, then McCarthy. But I do think this hype is warranted, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And if he does get that 2nd overall pick, I think he would fit well on the Commanders offense. I think Cliff Kingsbury could work wonders with JJ McCarthy. Similar skill set to Kyler Murray, but 3 feet taller and 50 pounds heavier than Kyler Murray. So I don't know. Not too bad. Not too shabby. I like it. And speaking of some more hype building around some rookies, let's go ahead and talk about Rome Odunze, because yesterday Matt Harmon released, his reception profiles. I should probably get the actual wording here. Let's see. Let me pull up the tweet. Reception perception. So basically what he does here, you can see it, is he charts out every single route that a wide receiver has run at college and has, given basically color coded to see how successful they were on those routes. And Rome Odunze was the very first wide receiver since he's been doing this, so 4 years, to have an entirely green route reception perception profile. And so that's very exciting. That goes to show that basically he is the best route runner that he's ever charted among rookie wide receivers, which is incredible news. We've been hearing the hype build for Rome Odunze since the combine. Maddie Kiwoom coming out and saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't even a lock anymore to be the first wide receiver taken in the draft. And the Rome Odunze profile is so tantalizing. And to see this is even more reason to get hyped. As you guys know, I've already said it on this show, I don't understand and will never understand why Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors in best ball right now are going multiple rounds ahead of Rome Odunze. I don't think that makes any sense. I think if you're going to take a chance on these rookie wide receivers, all 3 of those guys should be going around the same point just because we don't know landing spots and we know that they're the top 3. And to see a multiple round difference between Odunze to me right now is value town. I took him in the most recent mock draft live because he went a couple rounds after Neighbors, and I was just scratching my head. And now we're seeing that he's a better route runner than even Marvin Harrison Jr., according to Matt Harmon. That is pretty impressive stuff from Rome Odunze. Very excited to see where he lands. And I'm just getting more and more excited about Rome Odunze. As far as where I think he'll land, I still think he's going to the Chargers. I know I've talked about a lot now. I really don't see the Chargers trading back out of their spot. I know that they could take some of that draft capital that they'd get from trading back, but I really do believe moving on from both Austin Eckler, not even both, all 3, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, failing with Quentin Johnston, and they're positioned perfectly to get one of the big 3 wide receivers. I think they have to do it. And I think they'll do it with Rome Odunze because Jim Harbaugh, of course, just played the national championship against Washington. Clearly saw something great in Rome Odunze's film, I'm sure, and we'll be excited to pick him at 105 with the Chargers. I think that's where he's going to go, and I don't think that's literally the best landing spot for a rookie wide receiver in this year's draft because all the Cardinals is a good one too, I guess, but there's no target competition in Los Angeles. And so Rome Odunze, getting very excited about. I still think he's going to the Chargers, and I think he's going to get picked really high, guys. And I would be getting him in best ball while you still can, while there's still some value discrepancy. Although yesterday with this coming out from Matt Harmon, I'm sure it's gone up a bit. But either way, great news for Rome Odunze. Really special talent. Excited to see what happens here. And so we'll move on to the Minnesota Vikings as they have come out and said some stuff about Sam Darnold. We mentioned trading up. We mentioned the Broncos are probably moving up from 12. And we mentioned this JJ McCarthy hype, who is kind of who the Vikings are tied to. But yesterday, Kevin O'Connell had an interesting interview about their draft picks, about Sam Darnold. I've got a lot of quotes for you guys. This is a paragraph for you. But here we go. Asked about their draft picks. I think you view it as extra flexibility in a draft where between our pick 11 and pick 23, we think there's going to be some really good players available. If we were just to stay at those positions and take players, maybe a quarterback, maybe a couple defensive players, I think it'll be a big time offensive draft at the top. So when those marquee defensive players start to go, we could be in range for that around pick 11. But I just think about our picks as flexible. And so again, I mentioned here that I really don't think they have to move up. I really do think they're positioned perfectly at 11 to where the big swing of quarterbacks and wide receivers are going to go. And there's going to be at least one guy, Drake May or JJ McCarthy, sitting pretty for them. I really don't think they have to trade up. And it sounds like they don't need to. It sounds like they're positioned well where they think that they could take a defensive player at pick 11 because that's where the top end guys go. And then with pick 23, they think that they could do something special there. And then he goes on to talk about Sam Darnold. I think Sam's at the point in his career that his best football is ahead of him because of how he's handled the last couple of years, whether it's going 4-2 down the stretch in Carolina or when you turn on the tape for his work in San Francisco. You can tell Kyle Shanahan, Brian Griese, that these guys did a great job in the next phase of his career. Fundamentals, techniques, things that you look for to see growth. I'm excited to get going with Sam because I think we can pick off where he left off last year. Like I've talked about already, I love the group of guys that we have around the quarterback position in our offense right now, and I think it's going to be a really positive situation for Sam. Ladies and gentlemen, what else do you need to hear? Like, I know coaches kind of blow smoke all the time, but it really does seem, again, they paid him, what, $10 million? That is not necessarily backup money. That's not necessarily starter money either. It is right in the middle. And so I do believe that the Vikings are probably going to try to start Sam Darnold next season. And that is why I don't think they're going to trade up. And that is why I think, if anything, a quarterback will fall to them at 11 and they'll take their time with them. Maybe not too long. I don't think Sam Darnold has a long leash by any means. But I think he's going to start the first 2 weeks of the season at least. And I'm glad to hear that Kevin O'Connell is excited about Sam Darnold. I'm glad to hear that he's seen some positive stuff on his film. I'm glad to see that he can see that things have changed since his time in San Francisco. And again, I mentioned, Kevin O'Connell is tied to the 49ers. He has a good relationship with Shanahan. I don't think they go out and sign Sam Darnold unless he's spoken to Shanahan about this player's growth. And I don't think Shanahan would lie to him at all. So I still am kind of thinking and scratching my head about the Sam Darnold situation and don't see why you wouldn't be taking a really, really cheap risk on him. A really, really cheap risk, especially in super flex leagues. This is a guy who's going to be throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison. Aaron Jones now out of the backfield as well. So I think there's a lot of value to be had in the Vikings offense in general. Justin Jefferson has been slipping like ridiculously. TJ Hawkinson is available after like Dalton Kincaid and stuff, after like Kyle Pitts and David Njoku. Like you should be getting TJ Hawkinson. You should be getting Justin Jefferson. You should be getting Jordan Addison, and you should be taking some swings on Sam Darnold in Superflex leagues. Why not? Why not? Even if they get a quarterback, I still think that he's going to start at least a couple games, and there's a potential that he does really, really well. And I think that the Vikings are positioned really well for them to, maybe even take a chance on the Penixes or Bo Nixes of the world in the second round and just going best player available at 11 and 23. With those weapons, they don't need a top-tier talent at quarterback. They really, really don't. And they have a really, really good offense and system for quarterbacks to succeed, a similar system to what Sam Darnold just left in San Francisco. So I think things are really starting to bubble up in a good way for Sam Darnold. I can't believe I'm saying it. I really can't believe I'm saying it. But yeah, that's where I'm at. That is where I'm at. Yeah, see, exactly. Hawkinson in round 10 just literally sounds stupid. Why is he available this late? He was the tight end 1 last year, before getting hurt. And he was one of the first tight ends drafted, third round. I know he just tore his ACL kind of close to the end of the season, but when he returns, he's gonna be good. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Big Time Timmy Jim says, don't they need a QB to appease JJ? Yeah, they do. And I do think they'll take a shot on a QB in the draft. I just don't know if it's gonna be Drake May or even JJ McCarthy for that matter. I think it could be Michael Penix or Bo Nix in the second round instead. They let Sam Darnold start for a few games and then go that route. Because again, I think that the signs are pointing to them at least wanting to start Sam Darnold for a little bit with that money. It was like $10 million. That is a little bit more than a backup, and of course less than a starter, but it shows that there's still some potential and they believe in him a tiny bit. So I'm excited to see where that goes for sure. For sure. And speaking of course, another interesting quarterback dilemma, we've got more information on the Justin Fields and Russell Wilson stuff. Yesterday, Mike Tomlin came out. I mentioned one of his quotes yesterday, but I'm just going to give the full interview. Well, at least the important parts from the interview. So here are Mike Tomlin's thoughts on Justin Fields. Oh my gosh, man. He oozes talent and potential. He's worn the responsibility of being a franchise QB, but still gets an opportunity to come into a community-like situation and learn from a guy that's been doing it for over a decade. Man, there's a lot of meat left on that bone, man. I'm just excited about working to be a part of extracting it. And then he goes on to say, no, we're not resistant to competition. But as I've mentioned several times of late, I just think it's appropriate to establish positioning as we get into this thing. The term that I've used is Russell has pole position. And why do I use that term? Because during this time where we're not formally working, I just think it's beneficial. His experience in the NFL, his process has been honed and perfected. Talking about over a 12-month calendar, it's not only good for him, but it's good for teams. It's good for receivers, tight ends, running backs, all the things that people are committed to winning to do this time of year. Russell has those resources, that structure, and that's why I say he has pole position. It just creates a synergy that I think is good for settings and to go into preseason stadiums and so forth. Obviously, Justin will be given an opportunity to show his capabilities. Again, Mike Tomlin is doubling down that right now, Russell Wilson is the starter. But I do find it interesting that he's not calling him the starter, but instead says that he has pole position, basically suggesting that he is the starter for now. And then, of course, he ends these quotes by saying that Justin will have an opportunity to showcase his talents. And he starts these quotes by just oozing about the capabilities that Justin Fields has. Again, guys, use this opportunity to buy Justin Fields. This is the bottom of the market. You literally... I can't stress this enough. Justin Fields will be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers by the end of the year. I don't know why the narrative has flipped on Russell Wilson so much. I know that Justin Fields went for nothing, but I just believe that this is the perfect landing spot for Justin Fields. I can't believe he landed in such a great situation for him, and I can't wait to see his talent on the field next year. And it's just really, really good stuff. It's really, really good stuff. And again, just hearing that there's going to be a competition is excellent news. It's excellent news. And Harry Stoneman says it suggests that the competition hasn't started. Well, yeah, the offseason hasn't started here. I mean, we're not even in OTAs yet. So yeah, no competition has started, but it will start. And Justin Fields will take it over by the end of the year. I still think Russell Wilson's going to get the start, of course, for like week 1 or whatever. But I really don't think that the locker room is going to get behind Russell Wilson as much as they will Justin Fields. And I do think that they will need a spark at some point. The Steelers team has been kind of dead in the water, even if they're making the playoffs the last few seasons. They need something else, and Justin Fields is that. So yeah, very exciting stuff. Love that quote. Love that stuff. So we'll move on. I got just a couple more stories for you guys, and then we'll get out of here. Odell Beckham has been offered a contract by the Miami Dolphins. So this is a developing situation. He hasn't signed it, hasn't negotiated back or anything, but it is out there that the Dolphins have submitted a contract for Odell Beckham. This comes after their visit last week. Mike McDaniel came out and said that he likes Odell Beckham's, just time in the league. Obviously had a really, really good career. Thinks he could be a nice piece to this Dolphins offense. I do just stress that if Odell Beckham goes to the Dolphins, that it's not going to be that great for fantasy football, probably even with an injury. They really don't spread the ball around enough. It is pretty consolidated between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And I'm sure Jonnu Smith is probably going to get worked in a little bit next year. I don't think a ton, but I still think a little bit, because they've kind of neglected the tight end position. I don't think the wide receiver 3 position for the Dolphins is that tantalizing. He'll, of course, have some games, but I just think it's going to be impossible to manage. And so if he does sign with the Dolphins, I think I would be using that as an off-ramp to get him off your roster, even if it's for like a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick or something, because I do think that the ceiling that you can get for some of these later rookies is a bit higher than what you'll get for Odell for the rest of his career. But will be a fun landing spot for regular football purposes. I'm sure he'd make a couple big splash plays and help the team overall. I just don't think he'd be that good for fantasy. Which leads me to a couple rule changes around the NFL. First, the hip drop tackle has officially been banned. That was, of course, a good move because a ton of injuries had been caused by it last season and the season before. So they have officially banned it. I really don't have a ton to say about it. I know some people are saying like, oh, might as well just go to flag football. Screw it. I don't really care. Like it is what it is. It's a player safety thing at the end of the day. And all this will lead to is maybe more points from the offense. I know it makes it difficult for defenders or whatever, but at the end of the day, this was a dangerous play. It was hurting players. I'm glad it's gone. Let's see some more points. And speaking of some more points being scored, special teams has gotten an uplifting as well, as they have reformed the kickoff rule as of this morning. I'll share my screen real quick. They have adopted the XFL kickoff. This is what that looks like. Let me press play. That would probably help, right? So basically what you see here is the kicker or the kick returner is going to be able to return the kick before anyone can move. However, the defending team is moved all the way up to the 30-yard line along with the kind of blockers as well. So he's going to have about 15, 20 yards of open space before getting to blockers. But this will just open up kick returns as a whole. This makes it to where players are not working full speed as they get down the field and hit people. It will lower injuries and it will enable kick returners to have some more fun. Some other stuff that's being updated here. If it's a touchback, it'll actually go out to the 30 instead of the 25. And if the ball is kicked out of bounds or doesn't reach the 20, it'll be the penalty where they get the ball on the 40-yard line and yada, yada, yada. But either way, very excited about this. As you guys know, Devin Hester is one of my favorite players. I love kick returns in the NFL. I think it's a ton of fun. I've been an advocate to add special team scoring to every fantasy football league as long as I can remember. We have special team scoring in the Trade Gods League. Highly recommend adding it this season because it's yards, guys. Those people are out there getting yards. Whatever they return is where the ball starts for the offense. So it's important. And it adds just an extra layer of funness to your fantasy league. Go ahead and add kickoff return yards, punt return yards, Why not? It'll add some points to your league next year, make some more players a little bit more valuable. And it's like it counts, right? I mean, those yards count. So I don't know why it's not normalized in our fantasy football leagues. And excited to see what happens next year. I love kick returns. Glad to see the change. Glad to see both of these changes from the rules committee meeting this week has led to probably more points being scored on our fantasy rosters. Let's go NFL. Big time Timmy Jim says makes Rashid Shaheed a god. This is true. That guy's electric. Such a good playmaker as a wide receiver, but also really, really good punt and kick returner. Very excited to see what happens there. Yeah, and maybe you should trade me Rashid Shaheed, BTTJ. Give him to me in the Trade Gods League, please. But let's see. Do we have any questions? I think we do. I think I saw some at kind of near the top of the show. I definitely need to feel bad for Justin Herbert this year. I do. It's sad, but I do. But I think that they'll get him a weapon, and I think he'll be fine. How many birds do I have, and what kind are they? How about their names? I have 2 birds. One's a parakeet named Delilah, and one is a cockatiel named Pip. I also have 2 bunnies, as you guys are familiar with as well. That's Sprout and Daisy. Dynasty Superflex, what are you doing at the 102? Marvin Harrison Jr., 100% of the time, even if JJ McCarthy is pick number 2, you've got to get Marvin Harrison Jr. We can't overthink this. Either Rome is there at 105 or another top wide receiver will be. Yeah, exactly. I don't think the Chargers move back. I really don't. At all. Harry Snowman says Odunze is much worse than Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. I haven't heard that one yet, but I know that you do a lot of film studying, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I know I wasn't too impressed with Odunze in the Michigan game of the national championship, but that was mostly because Michael Penix had a really, really off game. I know he was still winning and would have had a couple big plays if he wasn't overthrown. And it's hard to perform against that Michigan defense, so I didn't put too much stock into it. But admittedly, that is the only thing I know about Roma. That's the only film I've watched is that game so far. So I don't know, but I'll trust you on that. But I do think that he's going to be pretty good. Yeah, cool. I think that's it. I think that is it. Yeah. No more questions. So thank you all, everyone, for tuning in. This was another fun episode of Wake and Take. You guys were a great audience as always. Thank you so much for spending your mornings with me. And I hope to see you all tomorrow on the Player Profiler, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at 10 a.m. Eastern. Go ahead and hit that like button. Hit the subscribe to the Player Profiler channel so you get notified when we go live. I will see you all tomorrow with a very special guest. Mike Reinberg will be hopping back on with me, so make sure you tune in for that episode. Thanks again, guys. You have a terrific Tuesday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.